track for now focuses on India GCC trade and investment ties. The chairperson for this track is Dr. Girijesh Pant. Dr. Girijesh Pant is a professor, Center for West Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Sir's areas of interest include political economy of development, West Asian economies, international energy affairs, and India's energy and security. Sir, may I kindly request you to take over the session?
Thank you very much. Welcome to track 4. The theme of this track 4 is, as we know, is a trade and investment. But before we proceed, I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Majumdar for inviting me to attend this conference as well as to chair the session. I'm also thankful to Professor Lavale, Dr. Vidya, Dr. Ranji Gupte, and old friend Dr. Ambassador Devre. Before I proceed further, I must admit that before coming to the campus, I had a different understanding or different assessment about the private universities, you see. And many times, whenever we got a chance to give view on private university, we had huge reservation. But talking to colleague here and looking at the proceedings last 2 days and the infrastructure here, I think a time has come when the private universities do recognize, get a legitimacy to be very active player in higher education. This is indeed a very positive development for the future of India's human resource development as well. Friends, it's very good that we have a very powerful panel in the sense that those who are in the field, who are engaged into the business of trade and investment, and therefore the kind of insight we'll get from them is going to be very, very useful for some of us like who study region or regional affairs from textbook or reports and things like that. I don't have to tell you that the economic footprint of India in the Gulf region are fairly visible. From the first speech given by Honorable Vice President till today, this session which ended earlier, we are told, reminded time and again, that Gulf region is very, very critical for India, for our energy, for our diaspora, for remittances, and we need the region. I would also like to make a small point that region also needs us very hugely in the changing context. The fact that when we talk of look West Asia policy, the region is also talking of look East Asia. And they factor China and India very much part of their look East policy. The point I'm drawing is that the kind of this symbolizes what we call in elementary in economics, that a new kind of a complementarity is being recognized here, you see. And the new complementarity provides us a new situation, a new context to engage with the region. What do I have in my mind is that true, the region is rich with oil resources, all that story is very well known. But I would like to frame issues slightly differently and request our panelists, if they wish, to react to that. See, look at the region today. A region as it was, I mean, in my understanding, it is the third phase of evolution of the region, you see. The first phase of the region was that when the oil wealth just introduced to the region, and some kind of a transformation started taking place more as a consumer society based on subsidies, no taxation, etc., etc. Then came a second regime where the students from the region started going out, the young population started going out, getting engaged with the higher education system, and gradually started coming back. Third, in my understanding, the third phase begins with Arab uprising. It's true that GCC never felt that kind of uneasiness which we found in many other countries. But the pressure on the government is here that the kind of social contract around which they define the entire economy, polity, and society is likely to be changed. And what is the trajectory which they are talking of? The trajectory they are talking of the diversification of the economy. is not a new word in the GCC lexicon. They've been talking about diversification since earlier days. But when the oil prices used to go up, the oil revenues were available to them. Somehow the pace of diversification got slowed down, you see. But today is a different situation. The break-even price of oil is not going to give them that enough kind of a space or revenue that they can underwrite the kind of social contract they have been maintaining so far. I'm not saying the prices will remain around $40, $50. They will move up, no doubt about it. But I'm very clear in my mind that in short run to mid-term, the phase of plenty oil revenues is not going to be available to the Gulf countries. And therefore, they are under compulsion, almost a kind of a TINA factor, that you have to diversify. Now, how do we diversify? What are the areas where they are going to diversify? This is one issue which we would like to focus in our discussion here. A second point which I would like to mention here is that you know that it is also a very elementary economics that the trade flows from complementarity, but the complementarities are not coming from divine forces, you see. It is the investment which restructures the economy in a manner that the new trade opportunities are being created here. So I would also request my panelists to reflect upon that how in this phase of diversification, what should be the pattern and the course or direction of investment by which new complementarities can be created so that they can reflect on trade, you see. Why I'm making this point? Because the trade volume which we are talking today is largely around the energy sector. And I'm sure you will agree with me that for a sustainable and robust trade relationship, trade transaction, or to what we say that go beyond the transaction relationship, it is essential that the trade includes more than energy item as well, you see. And that is where I would like to take the concept of strategic engagement. My reading here is that the time has come when the concept of strategic engagement with the region need not remain confined to only maritime security or going our ships in around the shores, but it is very, very important that the entire regional economic engagement should be defined in terms of strategic engagement. Why I'm making this point, friends? Because I feel at the moment the biggest pressure West Asia in general and the Gulf countries in particular are facing internally, you see. There is a huge pressure to bring some kind of restructuring within the system. And it is where I think we should, I would like to personally request our panelists that what kind of strategic economic engagement we visualize there, you see. These are not the countries where agrarian economy can be talked about. I'm also not very sure whether the huge enough market that you can talk of the industrial hub or manufacturing. The only area where we find the possibility as a key driver in the region is the service sector. Now, in the service sector, what kind of a strategic engagement India can play, visualizing Gulf 10 years down the line. I'm not asking, 10 years back, Gulf we know, we are familiar about it. But what I would request our panelists to think in terms of 10 years down the line, what is the new strategic engagement we can think in terms of Gulf countries? A last point which I would like to request you to consider is that you will agree that in this age of globalization, it is the geo-economic shift which is defining the relation among the nation. And when I'm talking of geo-economic shift, I'm talking of the kind of a global production network processes as are developing there, and the way the global supply chains are being created, you see. Along with the global supply chains, we are also talking in terms of regional supply chains, you see. I'm sure some of you may be familiar, all of you may be familiar with the fact that the entire Chinese success of manufacturing hub is based on their regional supply with the ASEAN countries, you see. So can we visualize some kind of regional supply chain with the Gulf countries, which we are closer to it? And what are the areas where we can talk in terms of engage into supply chain? That can be another concern possibly you can reflect upon if you wish like. And finally, my submission will be that, you see, in energy sector, what we are witnessing is that the radical changes have taken place due to the technology. The shale gas has changed the entire scenario because of technology. The renewable is also changing shape because of technology, because the cost factor is playing a role there. See. Now, if the Gulf countries will have to remain dependent on energy supply, not necessarily totally, but significantly, and if we will be continuing to remain as a consumer of energy, can we think in terms of creating new kind of a regional R&D hub on the energy, which helps us to create some kind of a cutting down our cost and makes a new energy partnership? So these are the concerns of coming times around which, if we can visualize our relationship, possibly we can claim that we are reinforcing the process of empowerment, which is mutually advantageous. And that is what I think the correct definition of interdependence would be. With these few observations, friends, I have a really very pleasure of inviting Mr. Aseem Srivastav. Last. Mr. Aseem Srivastav. He is head of the global oil and gas firm Kirloskar. Kirloskar, the name in Pune, doesn't need any introduction. And has a huge, he's an engineer by training, but a huge experience in the field. And I'm sure with his observation, with his insight, we'll be able to know much better the kind of challenges, the kind of a strategy which India should pursue in the coming years' time. May I request Mr. Aseem Srivastav.
Very good afternoon. Padam Shri and Padam Bhushan, Dr. Majumdar. I'm thankful to him for inviting me here. Dr. Vidya, Chair, Dr. Pant, my fellow panelists, all the distinguished guests here, and students. The morning session was really quite different. This session is more about hands-on. So we will actually share our practical experience, which I'm sure is going to help our student here also look at the business that we do differently. Before I start my presentation, let me share a story. The first trip to GCC from a present company around 10 years back, when I went there, I was not aware that in GCC they can't, or their pronunciation of pa is different. They call it ba. And we were in the business of selling pumps. So you can imagine what happened. And my wife was not very happy when I told her. International business actually is quite different. And it's something like this, that I give you free will, but you do it exactly as I command. So whenever we go to GCC or any other country from India, we feel that we are free to do business, but then we realize that we have a lot of barriers to doing business. And that is where government or embassies will not be able to add much values. The individual companies have to do a lot of things to get into those businesses. That is what the Americans have done for 100 years. That is what Europeans have done, Japanese have done, Koreans have done, and now Chinese are doing. So it is more about overcoming these barriers which are there. If you go to every country, and I've been going for the last 20 years, you have the same story about India, that, oh, we don't accept product from India. We have this problem, you have aesthetic problem, you have delivery problem. Now we, as business houses in India, have to introspect and see to how to change that perception. Because doing business in GCC is more about changing the fundamental perception about not only brand India, but each and every company that is there in India. This is already covered, I believe, in last 2 days, that, what is the history of our association with GCC. And it has been wonderful. We have a 4,000-year history where in 1970, I believe, till 1970 in Oman, rupiah was accepted. Even today, Paisa is one of their currency. So we had a very strong tie-up. All that changed because of the oil age. Oil age is something where the business shifted to the West. And the reason is very simple. It is Goddess Lakshmi. That is a fundamental on which everything goes. As after the Industrial Revolution, the West started procuring more and more oil and supplying more and more product, those associations really went up. And the trust and respect for India came down. And this is the history. A lot of things has been done now. In last 15 years, things have changed. Our business with GCC, which was just 2%, is now at 11%, growing at the rate of 40%. So it is really very good. From 5.5 billion, it has come to close to 160 billion in 2010, and this year it will touch 200 billion. A lot of other initiatives we have done at a country level to facilitate this business. But this is not enough. I believe the potential between India and GCC is far more than what it is today. South Koreans are doing far more than India in those countries. And we know the reasons why they're doing. So I'm going to share practical experience of mine in last 15 years in dealing with the region and what we can do, how we can engage, what we can do at the ground level. Our Prime Minister Modi is doing a great job from top down. We need to do from bottom up to see that we align and our business increases in the region. In a way, it is following our GDP growth rate. It is re-emerging. Our relationship with GCC region is re-emerging. It was very high earlier. It came down, and again it is going up. If you see the BRIC report says that India GDP will be 2 trillion by 2020. It has happened in 2015. And future will be much bigger than Japan by 2030. So definitely there is a huge potential. As we do more business, the trust and respect will grow. But how do we develop this trust and respect in the region is something that I'm going to discuss with my practical experience. If you see, I have a philosophy called as Ulta Pulta, thinking differently. So instead of seeing is believing, I say believing is seeing. Instead of survival of the fittest, I believe that the fittest just survives, collaborator excel. So by using this philosophy, what we can do is we actually give a lot of focus into small things like visa, non-tariff barriers. These things are good, JBCs, these things are good. They can give you business. But at ground level, we have to see that we have to build trust and respect in the region. And that can come from the core business. And this is little, away from what Dr. Pant wanted to say. I feel that we need to engage more in oil and gas sector, which is the largest sector. If you go to the ground level, any refinery, petrochemical complex, or gas gathering station, there are no Indian products. Very few Indian products. It is still dominated by the West. If we can have these products in India, why can't we have these products in our neighbor? And once those products perform reliably, we will have trust and respect in the region. Today, it is happening the other way around. Whatever we supply, there is a problem. So I believe there is a way where by engaging in oil and gas sector, and there is a window of opportunity. Everybody remembers when the oil price was 10. My team was able to get many Indian products from Larsen and Toubro, I was working that time, into the system of Saudi Aramco's and other company. We have done the same now. Our company now have global approvals from most of the oil companies from Middle East. And this we have done just in 3 years because of the oil prices. They are looking for a cost-effective solution. So I believe next 2 to 5 years is very critical for Indian company to engage and get their business done and get those approvals done faster. How can we do that? There are 4 areas where we have to focus. One is people, where anyway we are doing well. Many Indians are now at a very good position in that region and doing very well. Second is process. On the process side, it is all dominated with the Western or Japanese companies. We don't have many Indian companies who have the process licensee. So this is an opportunity, but we have restriction. Product, this is something where we have great opportunities to do business in the region by getting approvals and construction. I think these are the 4 areas on which we focus, especially on products and construction. We can increase our business substantially. Today, we import a lot of oil, but in return, we hardly export to that region. And so these are the areas where we can focus, and how can we do that is something which I'm going to share with my personal experience. So there are 4 areas that we have to work on. One is, of course, we all talk about government support. I agree government support is required, but that will have only 10% of the impact. You have to do much more than that. What you can do is understanding and respecting the culture. Next is doing more of marketing. We are actually very poor marketeers. We really don't know how to. We still are in a mode of sales orientation, and that really creates problem for many Indian companies when they go abroad. And in marketing is also an art and science of building trust. It is not, today if you go to many marketeers, they believe marketing is an art of iski topi uske sar. That is not the way. Marketing is more about building trust with customers, long term. Then sustainability and safety. These are the areas where Indian companies are very poor. They have to invest a lot of money into bringing this to the global standard. And as I said earlier, that declining oil prices is a great opportunity for all of us. Government support, I will not elaborate, I think so for last 2 days, a lot of people have said a lot of things. So these are the few things that we can do: long-term financing, harmonizing tax structure, or branding and promotion of the industry. And government, in a way, is partly doing this now, which is really good. I was in Germany when Prime Minister was there, and it was such a wonderful occasion where everybody was talking about Make in India. And first time we felt that, yes, something has been done from the government side. If you go to the history, most of the government has actually supported their businesses. I don't know whether you're aware that Chinese have procurement laws that favors domestic products. Australians have similar laws. Singapore's also have similar laws. Koreans actually help their construction industry. There is a big study that consultant like BCG have done, and they have come up with a report that India actually should be favoring and supporting Indian businesses, just like the West have done, just like the South Koreans have done. So in a way, doing it from the government side, these are the initiatives which under Make in India, it's already started. So now, as an industry, we have to do our part. And what we can do? One thing that we can do is to understand culture. I will give you an example where I had 2 young MBAs joining us from a premier institute. And the first time I sent them abroad, one of my customer, actually who used to love India, she got scared of India. So I asked her, what happened? He said, oh, yours is a country where there's a lot of dowry deaths. So this guy went there and spoke about dowry because he wanted attention. There's another guy who I sent him to America, and he started preaching vegetarianism in America. So we actually have to understand and respect each and every culture, and as a business person, we have to change and mold ourselves. So it is said, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. But we can take it further. When in Rome, understand the behavior of the Romans, and thus become even more like Indians. So by respecting culture, we can actually go further into, and culture is not just about the explicit culture, which is about food, language, architecture, music, dress. It is more about the implicit culture, which is basic assumption, norms, and values. I don't know whether they teach you here about Fons Trompner theory, where he has done a lot of work into how do you understand culture and reconcile differences. We all know that we are very bad in time management, but that is there in our culture for last many years. For Indians, the time is not very, very linear. For Western society, the time is linear. That's the reason they're able to do one thing properly. We are governed more by emotions and relationship. In West, many countries, it was more by rule. So our marketeers need to understand these basic things before they do business outside. Japanese is a very, very saving economy. As you go toward the West, it becomes spending economy. So these nuances, everybody needs to understand once they go abroad. This is what I meant by understanding culture. And I've done a lot of work in this in the last 10 years, and it has made a huge difference into doing businesses in this country. Second thing is marketing. And again, marketing is not about iski topi uske sar. Marketing is more about winning trust. It is more about to create a differentiated value. It is more about collaboration. It is more about globalization. I'm sure many of you know what globalization is. It's more about communication and consistency. If we can have these things in place, I'm sure we can have great business with GCC. Where we actually lag is quality and reliability. This is one area where Indian companies are struggling. We have to put a lot of money, a lot of resources into improving the quality of our product and reliability. Because for the last 20 years, I have realized we have the same story and the same questions by the customers in GCC about India. Many Indian companies go there, they spoil the name and come back. So I think back end has to be very, very strong if we want to offer a differentiation and do a lot of marketing. And this is not marketing. Sales is not marketing. You know, advertisement is not marketing. We go into a mode of sales orientation, and that really creates a huge problem when we do business overseas, especially in GCC. Even in Make in India, whatever recommendation they have done is something similar. Last but not the least is about sustainability and safety. If you see, in sustainability and safety, we are basically at level of pollution prevention, where we basically see that our inside the plant is good. We don't do much work on product. We don't do much work on clean technology and safety. So if Indian companies, if they invest in this, I'm sure many GCC companies will approve us. And this is what we have achieved. In just 3 years, our company business of international grew from 5 to 50%, and GCC contributes 30% of my business now by using these philosophies. Most of the oil companies in GCC have approved us. And this is the third instance where it has happened. You know, in companies like Virgo, Thermax, L&T also it has happened. So I believe this is the right way forward. If we can have these things in place, Indian companies, brand India, will become global. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aseem, for drawing our attentions to the difficulties faced by the Indian business in the cultural domain. It's ironical that a region with which we have a huge civilizational affinity and cultural proximity, it is where the culture seems to be becoming problematic. Anyway, I say it's for, especially for the students who are here in MBA, it's a good instructions to take care that if you are planning to be a man in this field, you have to factor culture in your strategy. Friends, 140 years back, started a company in Oman with a person, Khimji, which is a very big company in Oman with 4,300 employees. And we have indeed a privilege to have a colleague who is a director in Khimji Ramdas group of companies, a generation who is looking at India-Gulf relation in general, India-Omani relationship in the contemporary format. May I request Mr. Pankaj Khimji to address to us.
Rather good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, fellow panelists, students. Aseem, one more point on culture, and that is, I just heard the other day at a conference in Cincinnati, and somebody mentioned that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, on a take from that, where does Oman stand? Where does Oman India stand? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? Where do we go from here? What next? We are at a cusp where economies are faltering, investments are at an all-time questionable levels. Is infrastructure going to develop at the same pace as it used to with falling oil prices? And where does an Indian company go? What does he look at? And what do we need to do? Oman-India relations are historic in time memoriam. I believe our cultural relationships goes back, trading relations goes back 5,000 years, cultural relations 2,000 years. So in terms of proximity, we're straight across from Gujarat, due west, and you hit the first landmass you hit is Oman. What is Oman? Where is Oman today in terms of its economic prowess? And what is Oman? What can India gain from it? Oman is trying to diversify. Diversification is the new buzzword. But where does it need to diversify? I mean, we do not have as much oil as our neighbors. We do not have as much as gas reserves as our neighbors. In fact, we're depleting gas reserves and depleting oil reserves. We need to look at downstream. But what has Oman done? Oman wants to value add its current reserves instead of exporting them in the crude form. It has set up a fertilizer plant with India. It's a $1 billion investment. It's invested in India in an oil refinery. Oman is looking at co-investments with India in India. My former Minister for Commerce and Industry, His Excellency Makbul, mentioned this yesterday. And Oman is very serious to partner India in various infrastructure development opportunities in India. Where does Oman look to diversify? Three main areas. Let me just give you first a little a demographic viewpoint, Oman. 2.2 million local Omanis, 50,000 school graduates coming out into the job stream on an annual basis, 1.8 million expatriate workers. We don't have an unemployment problem. We have an unemployability problem. We have a challenge of skills development. Education, skills development, technical, vocational skills is the need of the hour. So that's one opportunity. Number two, we need to diversify in sectors of transport, logistics, tourism, and trying to promote SMEs. We want Omanis to be self-employed. Where do we look at? Take these three areas: supply chain, logistics, transport. Oman has built three new ports over the last 15 years, one brand new, and we want to look at Oman being the transshipment hub for the Middle East and Africa. We are slowly progressing in this area, but it's a no-brainer that Oman can significantly reduce the costs and time for international shipping companies to put their containers and cargo into the upper Middle East or upper Gulf or upper Arabian Peninsula and also North Africa. Oman is also part of the GCC rail network that is slated for completion by the end of 2018-19. It's 5,000 kilometers of track. Oman is putting up 1,200 kilometers of it. India is the largest rail network in the world. Probably not the most modern, but there is so much that India can contribute towards Oman's rail development story. We have 5 new airports, three completed or 2 completed and 1 more in major form of completion. And we want to make Oman an air cargo hub, especially for the sea-air links from India to the West. What I mean by sea-air is you bring in products which require a short duration of transit from India to Oman by sea, which takes 4 days to 3 days, and then put them on an air charter straight from Oman to Europe or America, which will reach in the next 48 hours, hereby reducing the transit time from 3 to 4 weeks to 1 week. This is especially relevant in terms of perishable commodities like food and agricultural products, and also for computer peripherals and diamonds and various things, but you cannot bring diamonds and gold products by sea, but purely by air. The third major area that Oman wants to diversify into is tourism. Tourism, Oman has a fantastic coastline, a very close proximity to India, a very stable political regime, very secure environment, both politically and environmentally, and extremely friendly people. Omanis have been known globally for their warm hospitality, and it comes only naturally to them to serve and to cater. So there is various opportunities in that front as well. Oman would like to be the Riviera of the Middle East. We are putting up a lot of fishing ports which have the capability of turning into small tourism harbors. So this is an area that Oman wants to work on as well. Finally, self-employment, SME. India is the largest SME country in Asia, in the region. Self-employment, creating small works, small enterprises is something which comes quite naturally to Indians. Oman needs to learn from this. Why does Oman need to look at India? Because we have a cultural affinity to each other. We have a proximity to each other. We understand the largest expatriate community in Oman is Indian. 750,000 of them, close to 50% of the total expatriate population of Oman. So, with that said, it would be very useful if the SME enterprise from the CII or the FICCI and various other trade conglomerates can come in and engage with the Omani Trade Association, OCCI, the Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and ITRA, our Export and Inward Remittance Promotion Board, to find opportunities in which area there is opportunity for SME. One of the areas that automatically comes to mind is downstream petrochemical, downstream plastics, downstream steel and aluminum, and finally downstream in mining, copper, and other metal industries. So I think with that said, I think there is so much that India can do. I'm very happy to state that Indian companies, Indian large construction and infrastructure companies have really made good the opportunities that existed in Oman over the last few years, especially the companies like L&T, Nagarjuna, Shapurji, Tatas, a lot of software houses like Infosys, Wipro, TCS, they've also come in and helped in networking in terms of integrating large global tenders and winning them in Oman. So the establishments have established themselves. Now it's up to us to look at the sectors of SME, transport logistics, education and technical vocational training, and finally in the areas of tourism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for flagging that the emerging areas where India can play a very important role includes the skills development, which in India also we are engaged in a big way developing skills. The other important area which you mentioned is about the tourism and small and medium enterprises. These are certainly in areas which, in fact, I would request any one of you to reflect on this. The GCC countries, every country has its own requirement. You see, it will be in terms of economic diversifications, the scales and the volume and the priorities. Not all of them are going to pursue the similar kind of strategy. I believe Oman will have a different take on that, say, compared to Saudi Arabia, you see. So therefore, if we can make, because if we are talking of future strategy for India, if we can factor this thing also that how individual countries have to be addressed, while collective recognition is fine, but in terms of strategy making, in terms of tactics, it is desirable for us to pick up what are the points where we can address in individual countries as well. All of us know that Saudi Arabia is a very key player in Gulf countries. In fact, the GCC mood is, if I'm not overstating, to a lot of extent is defined by the Saudi policies, you see. Saudi Arabia is the largest supplier of oil to us. We know about it. In terms of trade, it comes after UAE. But we are also aware of the fact that Saudi Arabia is a huge economy. You see, it's a very big economy where the possibility, in my understanding, of moving away from oil is as huge as possibly engagement in the oil and gas sector. See. The process of diversification in terms of urgency is being felt in Saudi Arabia in a very big way. The free economic zones, the way they are coming up in Saudi Arabia, all are indicator of the fact that the regime realizes that the next evolution of Saudi Arabia lies in developing the entire, this transition process which I was talking of. And we are very indeed lucky and privileged to have someone who knows the nerves of the Saudi economic scene as well as the Indian economic scene as well, because he is the chairman of the Saudi India Business Council. Mr. Kamel will tell us not only what is happening in Saudi Arabia, but from our informal conversation, I gathered he will also tell us that what kind of difficulties businessmen in general and Saudi businessmen particularly feels when they intend to bring investment in India. We know about the huge sovereign funds lying in the region. How can he help us in getting something out of that pie? May I request Mr. Kamel?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be here. I'm really honored to be here today in this beautiful campus. And even more humbled and privileged to share this conference with these seasoned diplomats and great brains. My friend, Professor Sunil, took me on a tour of the campus, a very detailed tour. And I'm really convinced now that Symbiosis University is really a unique institution created by a visionary scholar and whose impact and legacy would no doubt have already has a positive effect on this word and will be engraved in stone forever. I'm also glad to chair the Saudi Indian Business Council in these interesting times when the Saudi-Indian relations are moving dynamically in a positive way. The Saudi-Indian Business Council regroups all the Saudi businessmen and women that have dealing and companies that have dealings with India. And we kind of represent all the private sector in Saudi that deals with India vis-a-vis the Saudi government and the Indian government. Our partners here in India, our partner is FICCI, and we have monthly meetings with them and monthly and yearly forums. Now, my relation with India didn't exist 3 years ago. It was an incidental but happy coincidence. Our Minister of Commerce was coming here on a joint committee, and he asked me specifically to be with him. So I came in, and when I came in, I had, frankly, 2 suitcases, one full of clothes and one full of medicine. Now, after 2 days, I told the minister, Your Excellency, I have some business meeting, and I stayed for 2 more weeks. I stayed for 2 more weeks in India, and it was actually start of a love affair with this country. I joined the Saudi Indian Business Council, and then a year later or 2 years later, I ran for the chairmanship. There was an election, so I won last year. And in the last 3 years, I must have been here, I must have come around 15 times. So when I got the invitation for the forum, I looked at the list of speakers. I was hesitating a bit. And then our dear friend, Mr. Talmiz Ahmed, sent me an email saying, Kamel, you have to come. So I immediately confirmed. Attending conference with diplomats is always a tricky thing. They will always smile, but you'll never know what they really think. There was it's a French joke about diplomats. I'll try to translate it into English. I hope I'm not offending all my dear ambassadors. What's the difference between a military or soldier, a lady of the world, and a diplomat? And the answer is, when the military says yes, he means yes. When he says no, he means no. And if he ever says maybe, that means he's not a real soldier. Now, the lady of the world, when a lady of the world tells you no, it means yes. And if she says maybe, that's a no. But if she says yes, so she's not a real lady of the world, a decent one. Now, the diplomats. When the diplomat tells you yes, it's definitely a no. When the diplomat tells you maybe, so that's a yes. And if he says no, that means he's not a real diplomat. Good. So I was looking at the subject of the conference, and I thought that the only way I won't be bothered by the other attendees is to do something really on Saudi Arabia, because every single panelist has written at least 5-6 books, and every diplomat has worked for at least 40 years in that area, so they know a lot of things. So I said, let me concentrate on the business side. I thought the only person who would be able to contradict me is Tilmiz Ahmad, but since he's a friend, so he will not contradict me publicly. Now, Saudi, I'll start. Saudi, as you know, today is the only oasis of calm and prosperity in the region. Now, we have issues. We are surrounded by a lot of another hostile environment, but today it's the only booming economic country. To understand the relation with India and the future, I'm going to just touch very quickly on the historical side of Saudi Arabia or Arabia and India. How do you work with this? How do you work with this? Okay. Which one? Up and down buttons. Okay. Now, we've heard it in the last 2 days. The relation is really a millennial relationship. Long before Islam, the Arab traders used to go to Malabar, to Gujarat, and from there continue to the Southeast Asia. The advent of Islam changed the whole geography and the whole economy of the area. After Islam consolidated in the Arabian Peninsula, so the whole Arabian Peninsula, from the Red Sea till the Arabian Gulf became one state. The Islamic conquest started east, Persia, the Sassanid Empire, north, and west. And the Arab Empire, as we heard, as early as the 7th century, the Umayyad reached the Sindh, then the Punjab, and then the Sultanate of Delhi in the 12th century. And that allowed the traders to go all over India and create these links. Actually, on close to year 1000, the trade between Arabia and India constituted really the backbone of the Arabian Empire. Definitely, with economy and commerce comes science and education, and most of the logic and mathematics books were translated from Sanskrit into Arabic. And finally, these became the hub of the commerce in the Arab world. Now, throughout these years, relations was kept on consolidating. Since the 1800s, we had, India became a hub for education and medical treatment for the Arabian people. And relations were so strong. I mean, until today, if in certain countries of the Gulf or the eastern side of Saudi Arabia, you still see I still meet very old people who still speak Urdu or Hindi, and instead of saying riyal, they would say rupee. So it is so well entrenched in their mind. I want to say that the first electrical generator that was installed in Mecca was a gift from the Sultan of Hyderabad. And the first public library in Mecca also was also a gift from Sultan of Hyderabad. So it gives you an idea on the relations between the two countries. You have a problem of technology? Okay. Now, in modern India, ties were immediately established after independence of India in 47. Now, relations were never as good or as brilliant. India was considered too close to the Soviet Union. And then we had due to the Cold War, things were never that close. And things remained strained until the end of the Cold War in 91, 92. And then Indian labor started coming after the second oil boom. Now, these were the official visits. The first ever official visit was done by King Saud in 1955. It was followed by Prime Minister Nehru. Indira Gandhi's visit was very important because it opened the way for Indian labor. And I could say that in the modern years, the most important visit was the one done by late King Abdullah in 2006. Now, King Abdullah became king in 2005, and the first country he visited abroad was India. So it was a clear sign from Saudi to India saying, guys, let's partner. We had the Delhi Declaration was done in 2006. Prime Minister Singh came in 2010. That was the visit you arranged, Tilmiz. And this was a historical visit because a lot of agreements were signed. Security, military, energy, educational, scientific, everything. And most of them are enacted. And finally, last year, King Salman, he was still Crown Prince, and I had the honor of being part of the delegation, visited. And the reason why it was an extremely important one, because the first military agreement was signed during his visit. Well, I think it's okay. On the economic landscape side, both countries are on the top 5 partners list. But energy is really not only at the heart of GCC India, but of Saudi India. And this is something I think we should really work to change. we saw this yesterday. You showed us this graph, which shows that 20% comes from Saudi. And I added another one to see that in the last 5 years, the India's import of oil have kind of doubled. The trade balance. Now that's interesting because today the GCC bloc is the first trading partner of India, around 160 billion. Out of this, you have around 50 billion for Saudi, 60 for the Emirates, and then the rest of the GCC countries. But if you look at the imports of the UAE, UAE is kind of a UAE has become for GCC like Hong Kong for China. It's really a hub. Of the 60 billion imports to the UAE, close to 60% is re-exported out to other worlds, to Iran, back to India, to Central Asia, and to Africa. And out of these 60%, you have another 60% that go directly to Saudi. So the actual trade between India and Saudi, it's not 50 billion, but close to 70 billion, which makes Saudi really actually the first trading partner of India in the area. Now, the one important number that is the non-oil imports. And that's everything which is neither oil nor petrochemical. And it has been growing at 5% since 10 years. I think this is a very healthy rate of improvement. That's an interesting chart that shows the trade between KSA and India. Now, in '99, it was 2.9 billion, and look at the change. Now, other than the trade, India is home to the largest expatriate Indian community in the world. It's a vote of confidence. Somebody said it yesterday to the Indian employee. Indians are extremely well appreciated, very serious, very professional, very law-abiding. The only problem ever that came in was, if I remember, let me check, was in the Manama dialogue in 2008, when an Indian official demanded to consider Indian expatriates as immigrants who are entitled to have political rights and citizenship. Now, this had raised some eyebrows, but it got dissipated very quickly. The remittance figure is not the same that we saw yesterday by the young lady. I got this figure from our sources in the Ministry of Finance and Central Bank. And I see there was a discrepancy. The figures from India are 10 to 12, whereas what we found out was close to 15. Now, this will show you how we reached this number. It was 3,075, 200,082. That was the visit of Indira Gandhi. In 2004, it went up to 1.3 million, and we are at 3 million Indian citizens in Saudi Arabia today. Finally, on the economic side, now officially we have 500 licensed company. Okay. It's not the true number. And I'll give you an example. I mean, we have 500 in Saudi, 30,000 in Dubai. Now, the thing is that Saudi, the laws of Saudi forbid a foreigner to own directly a small retail business. But when I tell you that 80% of all the groceries and mini markets of Saudi Arabia are held by Indians, directly, you go into any grocery and you will see 5 Indians, they all look alike, they're all brothers or sisters or nephews, and they have this arrangement with the sponsor. They say, okay, we give you 10,000 riyal or 100,000 every month, and you leave us on our own. My assessment is the number of Indian businesses in Saudi is way above 100,000 business. Now, on the other side, it's only 50. This is also not a very correct number because there are so many problems in India. Bureaucracy is so heavy, so many restrictions, so many tax problems. So a lot of companies prefer to go through Dubai or through Mauritius to work in here. Now, look at these numbers. These are all official numbers from the ministries. 58 in India, and to KSA 2 billion of Indian money. SABIC alone has a $200 million research center in Bangalore, and they have over 400 Indian scientists working for them. They have another one in Gujarat. A lot of money, as I said, Saudi money goes through either Indian or Mauritius companies, so we cannot work for it. And finally, this is a very important number. These are the Saudi arrivals to India. It has gone 6-fold in 10 years. Opportunities, I have 1 minute? 2. No, because I'm taking the minutes of Khimji. So, FDI figures. They're definitely a huge opportunity to boost them. Saudi, frankly, doesn't need just money. Saudi economy is transforming itself from an oil-based economy into a knowledge-based economy. If Saudi is going to accept direct investment, it has to add a value to the country. And Indians could absolutely do a lot. Bilateral trade, I will talk about the problem, but it's an enormous field. Okay. Strategic partnership. I think there's we lack in this field these types of partnership. Political situation is excellent, and for a reason we're not seeing these partnerships materialize as much as we would like to. Saudi has a concern, which is food security. For example, this year we would be importing 1.2 million ton of basmati rice from India alone. It's huge. But to ensure food security, you have to change your land, you have to do land reforms, you have to change the tax systems, so many things you have to do here. Energy, Indian companies are really pioneers in the renewable. And you know, Saudi Arabia has adopted a new energy shall I tell them or no? A new energy strategy, and Indians could do a lot in it. And then tourism in both sides already increasing. Medical, so many Saudis now go to Bangalore for medical treatment, or Mumbai, and the educational is just huge. Unfortunately, we only have less than 300 students in India. We used to have 3,000, but for so many reasons, the number went down. Saudi also has the most advanced scientific institute in the Arab world, which is called KAUST. It only takes the cream of the crop, maybe Indian students should consider this school also. Challenges, I think, and I'm talking as a businessman, I have nothing to do. I think there is, we are seeing something like, as we say, a cold shoulder from the Indian government. I think, I'm finished. Sorry? Yes. I think there's a lot to be done, and the political will definitely induce more relation. FTA, it's already been stalled by India since 2006, free trade agreement. If you open this, this will double or triple the commerce numbers. Military is already well in place, and security is working well. Yesterday, Mrs. Bakshi talked about the maritime security, which is very important. But the most important things, if you want to attract investors, this is your biggest challenge. Your infrastructure is really bad. And for Saudi, you have the largest Indian community. There are so many ways to increase it also, even though Saudi is facing a certain number in unemployment, so we're asking foreigners to leave. So there should be some type of agreement between the government, I think, to increase it or to preserve it. Strategic partnership, as we saw in oil and energy. And one thing which is affecting today in the world trade listing, Saudi is number 45 or 46 in the ease of doing business in the world trade. India is 149. But the only reason why we're at 45, not 10, is because commercial litigation takes 6 months to 1 year, takes a long time. And if we're working on decreasing this. On the IMF listing of the most attractive economies, we're on number 12. I really went fast. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us a huge possibilities of promoting relation between India and Saudi Arabia. Now I request Mr. M.V. Satish from he's Senior Vice President who has been involved not only in the projects inside India, his company has been involved here, but I see in Oman also he has been, he will tell us what kind of a problem and possibilities are there between India and the Gulf countries.
With the slide? Okay. Fine, so I took my name off. Hi. Yeah, okay, I'll just go. So, Dr. Majumdar, Dr. Vidya, Chairperson Dr. Pant, eminent panelists, His Excellencies, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen. So everybody started with culture. You know, I was the chief executive of L&T Oman, so I went with my family in 2004 to Oman. So there was a big cultural difference. The cultural difference is my wife could not see anybody walking on the pavements. In Oman, you see only cars going. You don't see people like, you live in Bombay, you live in any place in India, you always see people when you just come out of the door. So that is one little real cultural shock. Second shock, if you just walk, in Oman, just cross a car, they'll stop cars. In India, they'll bang. So in Oman, they'll stop. The third one is that in Oman, by chance, two vehicles, they takkar ka liya. So, in India, what happens and all, we show a lot of emotions, so I don't want to get into details of that. But both of them get down and they shake their hand. So I think with all that is happening in that thing, I think they are very patient people. So what is required culturally in Middle East is different from what is done in India. So I think I'll just touch upon, I'll just skip all this. I'll talk about L&T's presence in the Middle East. We are actually 9th ranked in the Middle East. Okay, so we are, and Mr. Khimji was talking about the 3 airports, and we have done the Salalah airport in Oman, which is operating now on a design-build basis. I'm very glad to inform you that there are eminent personalities from Oman here. We did this job, and the minister told us that our quality is much better than Bechtel, which is a global company. So this is the kind of things that we have been doing in Oman. So, okay, there are many failures also that, so what did we do? What is that which is required if you want to successful in the Middle East? Because I spent almost more than 10 years in the Middle East, you know, as a country head of L&T Oman. Also, when I was very young, I was in Iraq for 4 years. I was doing a housing project in Iraq. Now also I'm heading all the business in you know, the international. See, in India, what we do when we get a project, so before drawings and all, सबसे पहले we do excavation. So drawing नहीं है बोलते हैं यार पहले खुदाई करो काम चालू कर देते हैं. But that doesn't happen in Oman. In Middle East itself, it doesn't happen. They want drawings, they want the process, they want shop drawings, they want the services to be written. So it is very, very much more methodical than what we do in India. I think this is a different thing. Then the safety in India actually, you know, see like as L&T, we are very much bothered about safety and all. We do all the global practices here. But generally what we observe is safety is given a buy. But that doesn't happen in those countries. Then the quality. Of course, the quality has to be the best. There is nothing called, no shortcut is, you know, done in those countries. So that is a thing. Then time. So if you don't do a job in time, so here, what happens in India, most are actually, you know, the jobs that at least L&T does is, you know, with private, you know, like what I do, almost about 80% is with the private partners. So there is nothing like contract in India. It's only the networking. We go and talk to them and see, you know, how to manage a contract and all. But that doesn't happen there. So it is not only that, you know, these guys stick to contract. There are a lot of, you know, what we call as goras, you know, the experts. And, you know, the kind of details that they do into contract is very, very important. Actually, somehow in India, we have not developed that thing called, you know, the quantity survey or the contract part of the, you know, any job that we do. But in the Middle East, it is very, very much required that it should be done. So now, with all that, actually, what we have done, so we have achieved actually now we've done about $5 billion of revenue in the GCC, the last 5 years. And if you see today, our order inflow is around $7.5 billion in the Middle East, which is going to happen. And what kind of business should we really go and do in, you know, in the Middle East, let us say? From our experience, we say that wherever you're core competent in your domestic, let's say in India, please go and do only those businesses there. Don't try to do something new there, which you have not tried in India. But that is very, very important. Only like, I do all the things like airports, hospital, hotel, residential building and all. But I am in the Middle East, only in airports and hospitals, where I'm very, very confident where we have done, you know, some of the jobs on design build, we have completed ahead of schedule, we have done in about 38, 40 months. You know, so some records is that we have created. We are there only in that kind of a building. I think this is very, very important for most of the guys that who are studying what kind of business we should do. So if your core competency is in that business, please do that business there. Second one, it is, see, now we are also afraid of taking big jobs and all. See, now if you take, we have got 2 jobs. We are doing the Riyadh Metro. It's a job of about, you know, $4 billion. And we are in the JV with somebody, with actually, you know, an Italian company. We're also doing a metro project in Doha, and also in actually the way it is done very, very professionally. Much, much more professionally than what is done in India. Probably because, you know, that is what is expected there. I think this is what we have to really learn from, you know, the way that we do, like even I tell myself that, you know, why did you do the way that we do jobs in the Middle East in India? I think this is something that we should all learn. Okay, so next, what is that, you know, we have a lot of projects now, you know, almost over $7.5 billion order book, I say, but there is a problem now there because of the oil, you know, the rate of oil has fallen. So what is that we are going to do now? So will there be any big projects? Yes, you know, I think the rail, GCC rail is coming. That's a big project. But many of the projects in the hydrocarbon sector actually is not there because the oil prices have fallen. I think they're not going to do. Many other things like aluminum, steel and all, I think will come. I think we need to focus on that. And what is that to be done? I think our Saudi friend told me that, you know, we have problems in India. I'm sure, yes, but I think Saudi also should be really open. And, you know, we have problem called classification in Saudi Arabia. I think we need to come out of that. Actually, I'm trying to get myself qualified as an Indian company, but that's not possible. So now I'm going with JVs. I think this is something that probably you should tell us, and you should help us in classification, because we really will bring in that kind of a thing. We can do the jobs much cheaper. You know, the Koreans went to Saudi Arabia. Okay? So they brought down the prices of their oil projects and all, really. Of course, many of the South Indians got burnt in the process, but they got something. What was going to the Bechtel, the floors of the world, it all shifted to the Koreans. So I think that is what we need to do. Many of the projects, we're also doing the hydrocarbon projects in Saudi Arabia and all. But I think they need to be much more open. See, like, you know, what we need to do in the construction industry or in the manufacturing industry is like what we had done in the software. In the software, when we do, really we thought we are the world's best. You see what's happening, you know, in the world. So we need not get constrained. We need not have those mind blocks to do, you know, what is required. I think we are very good in whatever we do. Yes, we need to kind of a fine tuning. We need not do that 19-20. I think the 19-20 has really spoiled us. The jugaad should really give way to innovation and all. I think that is the kind of thing that we should do. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think for bringing this point very strongly that the core competence should be the word on which we should, not only the company should build, but also India, when we are trying to work out a kind of a economic strategic engagement with the region, we need to identify what are the core competence areas in terms of priority we should promote. I think that could be a worth undertaking exercise. Friends, we are indeed very privileged to have with us, Deputy Managing Director for Export-Import Bank of India, leading institutions which plays a role in promoting and defining our export strategy. Mr. David, I'm sure you will try to take care of some of my concern in your presentation.
I think I have a height problem. Good afternoon, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's really a tribute that on a Sunday afternoon at 1:30 in the afternoon, we have a crowd of senior executives, diplomats, and some very hungry students on a Sunday afternoon. And I think that is a tribute to the founder, his vision, and the management of Symbiosis. So it gives me great pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you, but please don't take too much time. There are some beautiful ladies here with slips of paper at the ready. So let me try and quickly move ahead on this. What exactly, I've done something wrong? Yeah, I think this map is well known to you, so let me move ahead to the next point. What are the problems faced by the GCC countries vis-a-vis trade, and particularly where India is concerned today? Where are the opportunities and where are the worries? Now, for Bahrain and Oman, both countries did not have the same level of hydrocarbon reserves that some of the other countries had, and these are liable to be depleted much sooner than some of the other countries. It's therefore important for them to find other sources of economic revenue. Saudi Arabia, the oil reserves are huge, and I'm sure my friend has already given some details about that already. But given the change in the global situation regarding oil price and renewables, this is something which is going to come up. And importantly, the employment of nationals in the area of the private sector is a key challenge. There is a good deal of employment in the public sector, as I'm sure my friend would agree, but the private sector is a huge challenge. Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE. The problem is slightly different. The nationals are predominantly employed in the public sector, and again, less of incentive to work in the private sector, which means the investment in human capital, in developing skills, has been lacking and needs to be built up. Importantly, the fall in oil prices has created a lot of problems. Government revenues are squeezed. Just look at the change from a surplus to a deficit. The current account moved from about 266 billion down to 40 billion. That is a huge shift. The fiscal balance has moved from a surplus of 4.6% to a deficit of 7.4%. Remember what happened to India in 1991. That was a huge shift, and it was not half as big as this kind of a shift over here. So which means fiscal consolidation is going to be needed. The countries in those areas might need to cut back on some of the projects which they've been doing, which is a worry. Many of these projects are for the benefit of the local citizenry in order to maintain the status of economic development and to maintain public stability. Slowdown in projects could therefore have an impact. There's also an impact on India, something which we in India have not paid enough attention to. A lot of Indians are working in the Gulf region, sending remittances back to India. So we're all very happy. The drop in oil prices has moderated the current account deficit and reduced our oil bill. What's it going to do to remittances down the road? We need to keep that in mind. This is something which is facing us, and we have not paid enough attention to it. Take a look at the pattern of trade, and you'll see it is closely linked with oil. Take the total trade values, for example, the orange line on the top, and you'll see it is correlated very much strongly with the oil price. This is something which, incidentally, at EXIM Bank of India, back in 1990, 1991, we had been commissioned by the Gulf Organization for Industrial Consulting to do a study on the need for setting up a development finance institution in the Gulf region, specifically to promote exports. There was a team of us which did a lot of work, and we identified that if you need to reduce your overdependence on oil and petrochemicals, then it is necessary to build up an industrial sector which does not focus on these areas, and in setting up that industrial sector, build on world scale. Don't look at a national market, don't even look at the GCC market, but look at the global market. Regrettably, for certain political reasons, that study, though it was well received, was not implemented. Had it been implemented, I think there could have been a significant impact on trade at the present moment. What is about investment? One of the points raised earlier was that investment often leads trade. And I think that's one of the points, Dr. Pant, that you had particularly wanted to cover. Investment often creates the trade opportunities which go there. But are we really proud of these numbers? During this period, the total FDI inflows were just about $3.6 billion. Hardly anything. It's a drop in the bucket where you compare to India's global inflows, and the bulk were from the UAE, which was almost 85.6. Now, the point is well taken that some of this is rooted through other countries like Mauritius, but this gives you an idea of what the ultimate figure is likely to be. What about Indian improved investments? The figure is a lot better over there, and I'm happy to say that at EXIM, we've been doing a lot of this support over here in just about every country of the GCC. The largest recipient country, of course, is the UAE, predominantly in the port sector and also in units in the free zones, but also in Oman and in Saudi Arabia. On banks, etc., I think we are already well established. I don't need to talk about. Project exports, and my friend from L&T, Mr. Satish, L&T, in fact, is our largest single customer, and the Riyadh Metro, which he announced, is the largest single project export secured by any country in India ever. So I'm particularly happy that L&T secured it. I'm even more happy that we are providing the guarantee for that particular project. But apart from that, L&T and companies like Siemens, KEC, Kalpataru, and others have done huge project exports in the Gulf region. And with some of the prestigious international events, the Global Expo in the UAE, the FIFA World Cup coming up, this offers a huge advantage. Take a look at some of the numbers as per the Middle East Economic Digest, which along with Construction World is one of the better periodicals in the Gulf area. Just look at the construction opportunities and project opportunities. The point has already been made, I think, earlier, that we need to be more quality conscious, we need to be more reliability conscious. But given that, the Indian companies can contribute significantly to bringing down cost. Now, in an arena where the drop in oil prices has seen a drop in government revenues, a reduction in cost is a very, very important competitive tool indeed. But of course, we need to bridge it with reliability. Project market for individual countries. Now, Bahrain is, of course, the smallest market in terms of size, as physical size as well. Kuwait has oddly underperformed. We're not quite sure why, mainly because of the projects program not moving as fast as we could. Kuwait and Oman have, Oman has moved on the non-oil sector, and Kuwait across the healthcare and education space. Now, healthcare and education takes a longer time to mature, but in the long run, definitely has a great impact. And Oman, of course, being the most stable, Mr. Pankaj Khimji has already spoken, and particularly tourism. If you visit Oman, you'll find the geography of Oman, apart from the culture and the history, to be very different from the rest of the Gulf region, and is a tremendous tourist magnet in the particular area. Country-wise, this is what each of the countries in the Gulf is looking at over the coming decades. Bahrain has laid out the rail network project and healthcare, in fact, offers huge opportunities for Indian companies. In Kuwait, housing is an important one, railways is another important area, and water. Water is a tremendous need, and Indian water companies have proved their worth even in the Sahara Desert. So you can imagine their capabilities in many of these areas. Oman, apart from the gas developments, tourism has already been spoken about. Qatar on transmission lines. In fact, Qatar is probably the largest. Qatar and UAE keep alternating with each other as the largest single market for Indian project exports, predominantly in power transmission and also substations. Saudi Arabia, of course, is the giant of the area, and 372 billion Saudi riyals, which is around 100 billion US dollars, is a gigantic sum over a 4-year period to be used. The UAE's master plan also is there. Now, obviously, we cannot expect to get a large slice of this business, but even if you get a small slice of this business, it is a huge boost given the stagnation in our exports. What are the other opportunities? Alternative energy. Now, intuitively, this sounds funny. This is the region which has the largest reserves of petroleum in the world, and I'm talking of alternative energy. Remember, however, that this is the region in that magic band between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, where solar is perhaps the most efficient. Solar has high capital costs, but almost no operating costs whatsoever. Wind is another possibility. IT and telecommunications, as we move more into the internet age, wireless and telecommunication is going to be increasingly important. Metals and mining, this is old history, so I don't need to really repeat it. Petrochemicals is well known. Power. Power demand is tremendous and growing very steeply, and the cost of that power needs to be rationalized. Sophisticated financial and other services. This is a huge importance, and I think services was raised by one of the fellow panelists earlier as being a key opportunity in this area, not just the manufacturing, but services with a young and growing population, and of course water, without which none of us can survive. Where are we today in project exports? This gives you a snapshot. Where are Indian project exporters most located? And as you can see, it's Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Libya, and others which are occupying a major slot. Now, this picture changes. One large project can change the value here and there, but predominantly, these are the countries which are at the top for Indian exporters. We are providing also finance for Indian joint ventures. Apart from a project export, which most of the time only needs non-funded guarantee support, investment needs funded assistance. It needs a long-term loan, often in local currency or in foreign currency. It needs guarantee facilities. And a lot of investment into the Gulf has been supported by an EXIM Bank lending program. This is in plastics, this is in petrochemicals, this is in engineering, this is even in paints. It's even been in assembly units in the free zones. Institutional linkages. It's often just finance is not enough. You need to have the institutional linkage like the Chamber of Commerce, but others as well, including investment promotion agencies and so on. And these are some of the networks that we have built up to help Indian exporters develop and take advantage of these opportunities. I mentioned the study which we had done. One of my great regrets still that we could not take it to completion. So this research paper is on our website. In fact, a lot of our research is on our website. If it helps you in your assignments or in your research, please do feel free to go there. There's no charge for it whatsoever. Unless you want a print copy, then I'll charge you because of the environmental damage. And there's a representative office in Dubai specifically aimed to cater to the MENA and CIS regions. Just a snapshot. This is where EXIM Bank is around the world. You can see a large number of colored stars in the Gulf area. Perhaps there's still room for more stars in that area and also in Iran and Iraq. So I look forward to filling up this match a little further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, there are huge potential and India can take advantage of it. We started late half an hour, and we are only 10, in terms of time management, we are only 10 minutes late. So can we take 20 minutes time for our questions, or you are so hungry that we would like to wind it up? Okay, we will have 3 questions, and I'll prefer, coming from university setup, I'll prefer first question from students.
Simon, and I'm a student of Symbiosis School of Banking and Finance, MBA second year. My question, I think I'll be taking 2 of those 3 questions.
No, only one. It is unfair, you see.
Okay, you have a lot of the regional instability going on. How do you guys position your businesses? And the last one is maybe to Mr. Satish of L&T. I think classifications in terms of like, projects being won abroad, is it because of Indian companies tend to be more jugaad in India and they succeed in doing that? Do you people export that to the world? And how do the world react to jugaad innovation? Thank you very much.
No, you're talking about the business. Actually, the business, in the Middle East is slowing down, and it's a big concern, actually. The kind of projects that we will not have the kind of projects because of the oil price and all. So I think that's one. I think he also told now that, the big economies are actually UAE. UAE has slightly slowed down. There are not many projects in UAE. The projects are mostly in Qatar, led by FIFA, and in Saudi Arabia, because they're so big and they need the kind of infrastructure which is required there. And it is also there in Dubai to some extent for, the 2020, the exhibition that's going to go on. So these three things are now driving the business. Oman actually is a steady growth. Oman, neither big, not that. You get around $500 to $700 million business is what we look at Oman, which we generally get, touch wood. Okay, so that is the thing. Second, as L&T, see, as an Indian company, what we feel, the jugaad doesn't work there, So we call the jugaad a little bit, defined, other things, so we call it innovation. I think, I am telling you, other than Israel, which is there, probably Indians are the most intelligent guys. And jugaad is a way of doing work, but I think, in jugaad, we should not lead to 19 bees, thoda bas chalega, all that, This 19 bees and chalega actually a skill. You leave these two words, I think India will become real global.
Any other questions? Lady there.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is to Mr. Pankaj Khimji and Mr. David. Mr. Pankaj Khimji pointed out that Oman faces a problem of unemployability and skill development. So my question to both the speakers is, what are the opportunities that India could, what are their suggestions for India, and how we could invest in Oman for skill development, considering we are already having a mechanism for skill development in India. So what are the opportunities and what are suggestions that the speakers would give to India for development of these opportunities in Oman? Thank you.
Okay, I'll be very quick. It's a no-brainer again that Indian institutes of technical and vocational training need to engage with the Ministry of Manpower in Oman and understand the requirements in detail, understand the technical aspects of what sort of vocational training is required and get on with it. We don't have a lot of private vocational training and institutes, but some of them are being funded by large organizations or a cluster of organizations from the automotive sector or the retail sector, and these could also be engaged with. So I think opportunities are there, but you need to engage with the right people, with the right temperament to implement those projects over there. Thank you.
The answer as to what India can do and EXIM Bank can do, let me give you an example. All of you would have heard of the Manipal group of Karnataka. They are big in education as well as in healthcare. Now, we've financed them to set up an offshore campus in Malaysia for medical studies, where a lot of the Malaysian students are benefiting, some Indian students are going there, and in return, some Malaysian students come and study at Manipal in South India. Now, this is nothing but export of education skills or export of skill development. I'd be more than happy if Symbiosis is looking at setting up a campus overseas. Please talk to us. We're more than happy to help you on that.
There was a question of regional stability, and in countries that we talked about, especially the GCC, there is no question of regional instability. Oman continues to play a very neutral and a balancing card in the region. We are not and will not get engaged with any third country physical engagement or other engagement. In fact, we're trying to see whether we can come and bring the two parties at war together and see whether we can have a constructive dialogue to resolve that. So Oman plays a very good role. In fact, Oman has very good relations and has maintained good relations with Iran and Iraq, both through the past 25 years. We have excellent relations with Yemen, and we want to carry on building on those as well. So there's no question of Oman's instability as such.
Last question. Anyone?
So my name is Nalini Sharma. I'm MSc Economics student from Symbiosis School of Economics. My question is for Mr. Aseem Srivastav. So you said that Make in India would help us increase business, but let us face the fact, India seriously lack on infrastructure, and given the global economy is slowing down, the demand is falling. So will this somewhat of a mercantilist strategy help in significantly increase the business?
Yeah, infrastructure has been a problem for last many years, and it is improving. If you read Economic Times recently, in FDI we are #1 already. So that's a big thing. So what I believe is, despite all the constraint, because of the stability, the calm, I had this slide actually, which because of the time constraint I didn't show. There are a lot of good factors in India which will help many of the global companies to come to India. You know, our government is saying about demographic, that is one. Stability and calm, that is second. So instead of looking at one negative thing, if you look at 80% of things which is positive, I'm sure investment in India is going to go up. Thank you.
I only want to tell you that, you know, in the GCC countries, for example, we are doing many projects, but the Chinese products are not approved in general. I've been in Oman, the Chinese DI pipes are not approved. You know, the ductile iron pipes that Chinese makes are not approved. We actually took it from India, and those pipes are approved. Of course, we have a lot of problem, like he said, to enter into the oil and gas and all. I think we are making inroads into that, because the quality and all is substantially improved.
Well, friends, I think you will all agree with me that the contribution from the panelists certainly improve our understanding of the kind of potentials are there in the Gulf countries, the GCC countries, and the kind of challenges we are facing. And it also help us to work out the kind of strategy we should project in the next 5 or 10 years period of time. I would only like to end by saying that trade-led economic relations, time has come, it has to be reversed, and investment has to be given a primacy here. And therefore, an investment in the investment field, unfortunately, the Gulf investment feels shy in coming in India. I think we have to address our own problems, but we also have to have some kind of strategy that how to invite investment from the Gulf countries. Anyway, this remains a challenge for us, all of us who are studying the region. I personally would like to thank all my panelists for their contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request the chairperson, Dr. Girijesh, to kindly felicitate the speakers in this track. Mr. Aseem Srivastav, Mr. Pankaj Khimji, Mr. M.V. Satish, Mr. Kamel Munajjed, and Mr. David Rasquinha. May I request Dr. Rajni Gupte, Ma'am, Vice Chancellor, Symbiosis International University, to kindly felicitate Dr. Girijesh Pant. Thank you, ma'am. We now break for lunch. I request you all to be back by 2:30 or 2:45 max. Okay, 2:30. So we can start the session. And please remain seated till the dignitaries leave the dais.